So I'm recording.
Vidhuya kleshan me kuru charana yugmam dhrutarasam bhavakshetra praptau karamapi chate pujana vidhau bhavan murtya loke nayana mathate pada tulasi parikrane kranam Shravanamapi te charu charite.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome back to our third session. So let me just recap what we did last time. And, maybe I'll take some questions. Does anyone have any questions before we do that? Anyone have any questions? You just have to speak out because I don't know if you're raising your hand. I don't see everyone when I share the screen. Any questions? Okay, I guess not. All right. So what did we talk about last time? We talked about different sources of stress. School, peers, college, parents, and so on, right? Unresolved problems, social interactions, and so on. We talked about science and spirituality. What does that mean? Well, we looked at the role of a particular area or a part of the brain called the limbic system, and we looked at its anatomy. We talked about the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, and the hippocampus, and we talked about the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. When we are stressed out, when the amygdala takes over, the sympathetic nervous system is activated and a lot of stress hormones are released. And we also try to distinguish between stress and distress. A little bit of stress is good, actually, because that actually enables the body to do what it needs to do to withstand that stress and also to do what is necessary at the moment. So let's say you're crossing the road, suddenly you hear a horn, a car is honking, then you need to have the strength and the agility to kind of run across the street so that you don't get hurt. However, if you do that constantly to your body, what happens is you're on overdrive. Just like a car engine would be damaged if the car is driven always in the low gears, your brain and your mind and your body will be damaged if you drive yourself under constant stress. This is what we learned. And I had you Google the effects of chronic stress on your health, on your brain, and so on. So most of the diseases known to mankind are caused by stress. Now, spirituality, what that does is it actually tames your mind. In other words, it relaxes you. It's a tool to reduce stress in a very practical sense. So this is why, I personally like to look at any sort of spirituality as a necessary tool, as a life skill, rather than some kind of mystical, observances and so on. Observances are great, but if you understand the meaning and the true significance of each observance, it actually adds meaning to what you're doing. So again, let me ask you one more time, are there any questions? Just yell out, because unmute yourself and kind of ask questions or make a comment or anything. So today, what I'm hoping to cover is the general spiritual tradition that came out of India. It's ancient, and I will talk about the right knowledge. I will particularly emphasize this philosophy called non-dualism. Non-dualism means there is no separation between you and the divine power. So in other words, you, the essential nature of you is basically divine. Okay, that's Advaita philosophy. We'll talk about that, and that's the right kind of knowledge. So the moment you realize that, all the pain and suffering will go away. But how do I do that? You need to have some practical techniques. That's called yoga. Okay, yoga. I'll talk more in detail about yoga, but for now, just understand that the knowledge is the theoretical part, and yoga is the practical part. So I don't think I will get to the yoga part today, but I need one full session exclusively for yoga. You might wonder what actually yoga is. Yoga is not what you see, outside in the Western world. What you see in the Western world is just a sliver of this huge system that was developed in India millennia ago, long time ago. Okay. All right. Anytime you have any questions, feel free to interrupt and ask questions, okay? I will not be offended. I will not lose my patience, I guarantee you. And as I said last week, I'm going to put this slide up every single time that we give this presentation. This is what you guys told me, your idea of spirituality. And you'll see that this is very accurate. You didn't even know anything about the spiritual tradition or the books or Vedanta or anything like that, but you really hit the nail in the head, actually, when you spoke these words 2 weeks ago. So I may revisit this page as necessary. Okay, so scriptures of Hinduism. Hinduism should really be called Sanatana Dharma, because Hindus never call themselves Hindus. Hinduism or Hindus are terms that foreigners gave us. Basically, because this is a civilization that flourished, by the river called Sindhu, and some people couldn't pronounce the S's, so they called it Hindu. Anyway, I'm making a long story short, but this is how the outside world knew us, by the name Hindus. Okay, we never call ourselves Hindus. Now, the whole literary wealth, or the cultural wealth, or the spiritual wealth, can be kind of put into maybe 4 different categories. There may be more categories, but I just wanted to have some kind of simplicity. So the first kind of or collection of gems of wisdom, actually, experiences by people who looked into these things, the spiritual matters. So all this information is kind of organized in mainly 4 different categories. The first one is called Shruti. Shruti literally means, you may know somebody named Shruti. Some of one of your friends may probably named Shruti. Literally means what is heard. Now, this is typically the 4 Vedas that I talked about last week. What are the 4 Vedas? Rig, Yajur, Atharva, and Sama. Okay, these are the 4 Vedas. You should Google them, Google Vedas, and learn a little bit about what each Veda is about. Now, back in the day, there was no written communication. Every teaching was passed down from generation to generation orally. So all these books, they're not physical books, but these Vedas, each one of them is an oral compendium of spiritual experiences dating back from who knows when, time immemorial. So that's Shruti. So all the Vedas are Shruti. Then Smriti. Smriti means what's remembered. What do you take from these Shruti or the Vedas? They literally lay out the law of the land. So how should you behave? How should a married person behave? How should an unmarried person behave? What should a student do? These are called the laws, or the rules, I should say. Now, the most important ones are Manusmriti and Yajna Valkya Smriti, two of the most celebrated Smritis. Now, you might wonder, oh, these are small books, or no. Each one has thousands of verses and examples and similes and all these things. They're rich. No matter how you slice it, it's rich and deep. Now, it's a shame that the Western world doesn't know anything about these things. The only thing they know about India is cash, cow, and curry. That's a shame. Now, Itihasa. Itihasa means epics. There are 4 epics, but again, the most celebrated of these epics are Ramayana and Mahabharata. And there are 2 more, Yoga Vasishtha and Harivamsa, but I may not get into those things at all. It's befitting that I put Ramayana first, because right now it's Ramayana Masa, meaning the Ramayana month, meaning people recite the story of Rama in the form of poetry. Right now, as we speak, it's going on. I mean, this is organized by KHNJ also. You should check it out. You can actually hear, beautiful Malayalam words spoken in a poetic way, and you might understand something actually. And you can see the richness of the literature, of the poetry. That's Ramayana. Ramayana, as you know, I tell you very briefly, is the story of the Prince Rama, how he had to fulfill his father's wish. There's a lot of story behind that, by the way, but I'm just telling you a very, very short version of it. And Rama is married to Sita, and his brother Lakshmana. These 3 had to go to the forest again to fulfill a wish that was kind of forced upon them by fate. I would say fate, because nobody really intended that to happen, but that's the way it turned out to be. You should really ask your parents for some kind of video, or maybe you can just look up YouTube and then study the story of Rama. That whole story now. So Rama, his brother Lakshmana, and Sita, they went to forest for 14 years, and during that time, this demon named Ravana, he stole Sita, kidnapped. Okay. And with the help of hundreds of monkeys, there. By the way, Hinduism considers everything as part of that all-pervading entity. So it's like Hanuman is worshipped. So we don't consider monkeys as animals, just animals. We ascribe divinity to every living being. So Rama, with the help of this army, crossed the sea, the strait between India and the present-day Sri Lanka, and a huge war ensued. And at the end, Rama killed Ravana and then took Sita back and came back to his kingdom, Ayodhya, and he lived um, happily for some time. And then there were some other issues as well. But again, the whole story is about uh, establishing what's called Dharma, doing the right thing. Now, Mahabharata is much bigger. It has 100,000 verses, and it's probably the world's largest literary piece of work. And if I were to put a date on it, I don't know, probably thousands of years before Christ. It's not really important when this happened or even the historical accuracy of the story. What's important is really what we can learn from these stories. Mahabharata, there's no human behavior or human characteristic that's not touched upon in the Mahabharata story. There's so many allegories and stories and things like that. So my point is, itihasas are stories or allegories and parables written for the common person to digest these really incredible principles and philosophies, which are otherwise kind of elusive. If you go directly to the Vedas, if you try to read them, you may not be able to understand them. But if you read the stories, that's the power of stories, right? Stories can teach you a lot of things in a much simpler way. So Ramayana and Mahabharata are amazing, amazing pieces of literary work. And Ramayana was written by Valmiki and Mahabharata by Vyasa. Some people argue that Vyasa was not one person, but it was a string of writers. But again, I personally don't care. What I care about is, how I use the wisdom contained in these amazing pieces of work. And Mahabharata is often considered the fifth Veda too. Now, there are Puranas as well, also stories, easily understandable by a common person. There are 18 different Puranas, also written by Vyasa. So when you look at this, I think some Western scholar commented that the all of European Western literary work is not even equivalent to just one of these pieces of work, one of these literary pieces of work. So that may be right. I mean, it's something that we should be proud of, is what I'm saying. And unfortunately, the Western world is not at all familiar with any of this stuff. For example, Kalidasa is an amazing poet, Kalidasa. No one has even heard of him. They talk about Shakespeare. Shakespeare is great. I'm not denying that. But those who know Kalidasa and who knows his work probably are not easily impressed with Shakespeare's work. So this is just one aspect of Indian life, by the way, Hinduism's contributions to the world of knowledge, really. And if you look into music or dance or something like that, again, it's a wealth of information and knowledge in each of these categories. So you should definitely check out Ramayana, the story of Ramayana and Mahabharata. There are wonderful videos available, even online. You should ask your parents about that. Okay. So let me back up a little bit. So there are things called Upanishads. Upanishads means the ends of Veda. All these, I'm just going to call them books for now because I can't find any other word. So at the end of each Veda, there's an Upanishad, which is kind of the summary of what each Veda is teaching you. Now, if you take all the Upanishads and if you take the summary of those, this is what you get, the Bhagavad Gita. So if you study the Bhagavad Gita and practice the principles laid out in the Gita, you really understand what Hinduism is all about, the authentic Hinduism. There are, when I say Hinduism, I really want to emphasize the fact that it's not a monolithic religion at all. There are 6 different philosophies in Hinduism. I don't want to confuse you with that. I may talk about that next week, but this week I don't want to do this. I just wanted to say this. Many people, both Western and Eastern, great people have been inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. Now, this is a famous quote from Robert Oppenheimer when the first atomic bomb exploded, or the test actually. It's not when the first bomb exploded, but when they did the test in New Mexico in 1940s, right before the Second World War ended. And when he saw the blast, this is what he said. This is a direct quote from the Bhagavad Gita. Now I'm become death, the destroyer of the worlds. Oppenheimer and then Schrodinger and Heisenberg, all these people were inspired. Even Einstein was inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. And not to mention many great Indian leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Tagore. So I said something about the first chapter last week. The first chapter was about what? The anxiety that it was debilitating for Arjuna. Arjuna is a soldier in the battlefield. Arjuna actually should represent all of us, each one of us, right? And he was debilitated because of anxiety and this heaviness of heart. And he wasn't able to do what he was trained to do all his life. And we all experience that, right? Let's say I prepare a speech for a long time. The moment I step on the stage, suddenly my hands are shaking, my knees are trembling, and I'm sweating. I can't remember what I was going to say and things like that. So it's much. I mean, imagine like something like that, but in a scale much bigger than that. He's in a battlefield. So seeing this, Krishna advised him about the truth, absolute reality, knowing which anyone can be liberated from pain and anxiety and unhappiness, right? That's the gist of the Bhagavad Gita. And Sri Krishna goes really deep into the philosophy, the Sanatana Dharma philosophy, how to live your life and how to be happy. So the whole Bhagavad Gita is about that. And it is only in chapter 2 that Sri Krishna speaks for the first time. The first chapter is all about how Arjuna was sad and wasn't able to do what he was supposed to do. And then around verse 11 or so, Sri Krishna, Lord Krishna, starts speaking. First, he talks about the 3 orders of reality. So what are they? And he said, once you know the ultimate truth, and once you're able to recognize the existence of absolute reality, you're free, you're liberated. So that state of mind, or that state, is called moksha. This is a very, very important concept in Hinduism, moksha. M-O-K-S-H-A. So you should write that down, okay? Let's say you don't get anything out of this session, at least you should say, I know what moksha is, what Hinduism says about moksha. Moksha means liberation, okay? Liberation from anxiety and worries and unhappiness. So it's sort of a state of bliss, if you will. So the first thing Sri Krishna tells Arjuna is that relax, you don't ever die, because what we call you is not your arms, not your body, not any of the physical attributes that we normally associate with a person. You are beyond that. You, when you say you are the all-pervading entity called the Brahman. The name, the term Hinduism uses is Brahman. Don't confuse that term with Brahman, which is a name of a caste. Brahman is this, so, we have to call this something, right? So the model, this is the model of the universe, really. Just like scientists have models, this is the model of Advaita philosophy. The models describes universe this way. Everything in the universe, if you look at the most fundamental aspect of it, is really Brahman. So everything is made of that entity. So this is Advaita. Advaita means non-dualism. There's a Dvaita philosophy too, which is also accepted by Hinduism. So this is why we say Hinduism is the most tolerant religion in the world. It doesn't say you have to believe in this and this and this, only then will you be a Hindu. Any questions so far? I know I've talked a lot already. Any questions or comments? Is this easy to understand or confusing, or give me some sense?
I think it's really cool and easy to understand.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, so again, the gist of this slide is this. Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, hey, relax, buddy. You will never die, or you were never born either. You're always existing, the real you. So this is the crux of Indian or Hindu spirituality, okay? Some people say, oh, Christians believe in just one God and Hindus believe in many gods. That's not exactly accurate. It's not a polytheism, polytheistic religion. The ultimate truth, at the ultimate level, there's just one. And we even go to the extreme of saying everything is God. This is why we worship the sun. We worship, as I said, animals. Everything is made of one, at the most fundamental level, one entity called Brahman. So you are that. That's another way of saying Tattvam Asi. Or Aham Brahmasmi means I am Brahman. Okay, so these are two equivalent statements. Now, I want to have a little bit fun now. Okay.
So Prasadata,
Yes.
we have received one question from one of our
Okay.
friends.
Yeah.
What is the difference between dualism and non-dualism?
Okay. All right. Okay. There are two kinds of dualism: the Western style and the Indian style. Let me just talk about the Western style. Western, like a Abrahamic religion, dualism means you are different from God. Okay, God created you in his image, but God is a separate entity. He's an overseer. He makes sure everything is, working the way it should be. And, you will be punished for your sins and stuff like that. But Hinduism asserts that you are God. Everything else is God too. So there's at the most fundamental level, there's only one reality. This is non-dualism. You're not different from anybody else. So what's inside you is the same as what's inside me, or inside a cow. At the most fundamental level. Now, why do things look different? The theory is it's called Maya. So when this incredible entity, let's call it energy or something like that, this is unmanifest. When this entity becomes manifest, that's when it takes different forms. So a water bottle is looking different from my cell phone. And Hinduism doesn't deny that it doesn't ever say that's not real. It is real, but I have a few verses coming up from this chapter, then you'll probably understand what that reality means. Anything that is not permanent is not the absolute reality. There's only one unchanging reality, that is Brahman. Okay, so what I would argue is that this is analogous to the principle of conservation of energy and matter. Analogous, I say analogous. I will never claim that ancient Hindus came up with the conservation of mass and energy. No, I wouldn't say that. That would be ludicrous. But dualism is what Abrahamic religions believe in. You have the free will, you're free to choose, but then you will be judged on the day of redemption, right? When you die, you will be judged, okay? But in Hinduism, that concept is not there. Well, you will be punished, but not for your sin, but by your sin. Does that make sense? So if I go in the wrong path, my action is karma, right? So karma means what? You reap what you sow, right? So that's different. I hope I answered that question. Can you give me some feedback on that? Did I answer that question? Who asked the question? This is a great question.
That was Adira.
Adira.
Yeah. So Adira, please feel free to join.
Does that make sense, what I said? Hello?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's have a little bit fun. So you probably have seen this in science classes. Matter is made up of atoms. Atoms are made up of nuclei and electrons. Yes? And nuclei are made up of protons and neutrons. When you go deeper and deeper and deeper, what happens at the end? So what are electrons made of? Are there material objects called electrons, or are they manifestation of energy, or are they like freezing of energy? Is it energy that's manifested as material object? Actually, science says this. It is actually really, we're all made of atoms, the same thing, electrons and protons and electrons, protons, and neutrons. But really, when you think about it, there's no physical things. It's all energy. Who said that energy and matter are equivalent? Anybody know? Anybody know? His first name is Albert. Anybody know this formula? E is equal to mc square.
Albert
Yeah.
Einstein?
Anjali?
I said Albert Einstein.
Yes, exactly. So I say that the viewpoints are analogous, two analogous perspectives. See, I didn't say they're the same. The law of conservation of mass and energy says what? Matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. And what did we learn from the Gita? The first thing that Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, you cannot be destroyed. The real you, which is the energy that makes you, or the entity called Brahman. We didn't call it energy, but Brahman. So I think it's very analogous. I'm not saying that they arrived at the same thing through the same method, But I think the analogies is very striking. So Advaita philosophy asserts, Advaita means non-dualism. So who asked that question? Anjali, right? So assert that you're that energy, that Brahman. Even though I don't have the time to go into these 6 different schools of philosophy, you should know that there are other schools of philosophy in Hinduism. One of them called Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy is a dualistic philosophy. It asserts that the material objects and the spirit or the energy or whatever, they are 2 different things. So they have separate existence. It's called Purusha and Prakriti. Prakriti means nature. So anything you see in the nature, it asserts that it has a separate existence from Purusha. Purusha is the all-pervading energy. Okay, but the Bhagavad Gita is really about Advaita philosophy. Aham Brahmasmi. See, Aham Brahmasmi means I am Brahman. Tattvamasi, which means thou art that. That meaning that entity, which we call, some people call it God. Okay, so are there multiple gods in Hinduism? No, it's only one God, Brahman. Are there different manifestations of that entity? Yes, as many as you like. So this is why there are 330 million gods in Hinduism, right? Or we worship many different ways. You can worship anything you like. You can worship anything you like. You can worship a tree, provided you understand what you're worshiping. As I said before, namaste, namaste. You know what that namaste means? You should know that. It's not high, right? Namaste means it's much more deep than that. Namaste means I respect, I bow down to you, the real you. That's the same essence that's residing in you, that's residing in me. So you and I, at the most fundamental level, are the same. That's what namaste actually means. Okay? I'm assuming everyone has heard of that greeting, namaste, right? Namaste. So the spiritual component of that is that, okay, what I just described. Okay, so yeah, so Sankhya philosophy is saying that the pain and suffering can be removed by the right knowledge of reality. I already mentioned Purusha and Prakriti, and yoga is a practical tool to get to that point. Very simply put, yoga is really control of the mind. You can also define it as dexterity in action. So yoga is huge. It's huge. So I like to devote the next session completely to yoga. I want to talk about the eightfold Ashtanga yoga. There are 8 different components to yoga. The Hatha yoga that you see is only one tiny portion of it. And one of the things is meditation, right? Meditation is a huge part of yoga. How do you get the control of the mind? Once you reach the control of the mind, then that's when you actually realize that, hey, I am that Brahman. The knowledge it doesn't do anything for you. I mean, I can just say, well, you're that, but experience is what matters. So Hindu philosophy or Hindu religion is an experiential religion. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense to you or not. It's not faith-based. Don't believe anything just because a book tells you this is so. Experience it and then believe, or then know, not believe, know. So once you follow certain procedure, steps, it'll help you get there and get to that destination. So yoga can mean two different things. It comes from the word yuj. Yuj means union. Union with what? With your real self. Okay, so that's a state of mind. And the path is also called yoga. So it's like I go to New York City, I see a bus saying Boston, right? The bus is a Boston bus, and it takes you to Boston. So yoga is a method that takes you to the mental state, which is also called yoga. Okay, so yoga is either the union or the path to get there. Now, from New York to Boston, are there multiple paths? Can you take multiple routes? Or is there only one route to get to Boston from New York? What do you think? Come on, give me something. Are there multiple paths from New York to Boston? Or just one path?
There are multiple paths.
Multiple paths. So there are multiple yogas. They're called karma yoga, jnana yoga, and so on. Raja yoga, bhakti yoga, right? All these have different meanings. So no matter what you do to get to that stage, it's fine, it's accepted. This is what we mean by, the path doesn't matter. So Hinduism always says, it doesn't matter what path you follow, as long as your destination is clear, that's fine. That's when you actually realize your true self. Once you realize your true self, you're liberated. You attain moksha. Okay? So I have selected a few verses from the Gita, and Rupa Aunty has kindly agreed to recite them for us. So let's hear verse 12. It's good to hear the Sanskrit, so that's why I asked Rupa Aunty to recite them. So let's just recite one and then I'll explain the meaning. Verse 12, chapter 12, chapter 2. Go ahead.
Vaham jatu nasam natvam neme janadvipaha nachaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayam atah param.
It means it's not that at any time in the past, indeed, was I not, nor you, nor these roots of man. In other words, we always existed. We never not existed. Okay? Nor shall we ever cease to be hereafter. That's what it means. The next verse, go ahead.
Dehi nosmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tata dehantara praptihi dhirastatra namuhyati.
Okay, it means just as in this body of ours, the embodied entity, so the embodied Brahman is called self. Okay, the self with a capital S. The self passes from infancy to childhood. We don't see the infant. We don't say the infant is dead, right? But it passes on from infancy to childhood to youth and then to adulthood, and old age and so on, right? And so also it does pass into another it, capitalized it. So that it is self, the self or the Brahman. It says a firm person doesn't grieve at all. You should not grieve about impermanent things. What are impermanent things? Next chapter. So every verse is logically following the previous one. Okay, so see, a firm person doesn't grieve at all. Grieve at all about what? Once you know the permanency, you should not have a reason to grieve. Right? When you grieve about impermanent things, you should always remember what is not real is not going to last. So that's verse number 14. Yeah, go ahead.
Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkata agama pahina nityaha tam stitikshasva bharata.
Okay, so anything that we can touch and feel is impermanent. So senses, contacts of senses with objects, right? Um, in the verse it says heat and cold, but that just means different kinds of experiences. Pleasure and pain, they all have a beginning and an end, so they cannot be permanent. This is the essence of that famous statement, this too shall pass, which is a very, very comforting thought, right? Let's say you're going through a really, really tough time. Know that it is impermanent. That's not permanent. That whatever you're going through is probably a problem with your peer or your classmate or your teacher. It's not going to be permanent. It's going to pass. Relax. No, it's not going to affect you permanently. That's a message. Endure them bravely. Go through them. Don't always try to be evasive. If you don't know how to encounter problem head on, you will not be able to overcome them. That's a message here. Endure them bravely. Okay. Now, if you look at it, this is all just common sense. It's not kind of mysterious or anything like that. So as I said before, my goal is to kind of demystify the Bhagavad Gita and the Hindu scriptures, to understand it from a practical point of view. And if you look at even modern books on self-improvement and things like that, they say the same thing. They say the same thing. Let's say you're writing or applying to colleges, you will get into a good college. If you cannot find the best college will find you. Or let's say you're worried about an assignment, just go through what you need to go through. Okay, do not worry too much about the results or the end results. Okay, that's verse 14 actually. Everything you touch and feel is impermanent. There's nothing permanent about it. So this too shall pass. Okay, verse 17.
Avinashitu tad viddhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham avyayastatsya na kaschit kartum arhati.
So the flip side of that is, know that that which pervades everything, the Brahman, is imperishable. Nothing can cause destruction of that. Another way of saying that, it doesn't matter what grade you get. No one can destroy who you are. Who you are is you're a divine being, right? The divinity is within you. You can be all powerful. So just tap into that immeasurable potential that you have. Once you know that, nothing in this world is a problem. This is verse 17 is so powerful to me as personally. Whenever I'm depressed or I don't know what to do next, I look at verse 17. Immediately, my battery is charged up. Because I know external circumstances cannot change me, the real me, or the divinity inside me, or the huge, huge potential that's inside me. I may not be able to do something now. That's because my mind is playing tricks on me. My mind is not me. Okay, so that's another thing. We're kind of out of time right now. So who am I? That's a big question. I'll probably get into that next time. And before we go, one more verse, verse 38, after which Lord Krishna says, okay, now I told you the knowledge, the right knowledge. But now I'll tell you how to practice this yoga, the practical aspect, which we'll take up next week. So real quick, verse 38, please.
Sukha dukhe same krutva labha labhau jaya jayau tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papamavapsyasi.
So no matter what your experience is, you may fail, you may win, it doesn't matter. You should do what you're supposed to do. Okay? Do not look at temporary setbacks as failure, is the message of this. Engage in the battle for the sake of battle. Now, expand the meaning of battle. None of us are soldiers. We're not going into battles. Okay? What's our battle? Pick your battle. I mean, that's a common expression, right? If you cannot do anything about something, don't worry about it. But if you can do something about it, do what you can. So engage in the battle for the sake of battle. So you need to really understand the word battle. Battle doesn't actually mean battle in the battleground. Battle is life, okay? It's a huge assignment hanging over my head that's due 2 days from now. Okay, chip away a little by little. You will get there. You will get there. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the process. You shall win and not incur sin. Sin, again, it has a different meaning from the Abrahamic concept. Sin is really okay. It's a little bit kind of an elaborate topic. I will not go into this tonight. I may actually go into it next time. Remind me. There are so many different things in Hinduism. That's the thing. Once you touch upon one aspect of it, you cannot just quickly explain and then go to the next thing. So sin is not what you think it is. Okay. Oh, that's perfect. Stop sharing. Any last minute questions or comments? Anything at all? What I want to know is whether this kind of discussion makes sense to you. Am I making it clear? That's what I want to know. Do you have any suggestions for any other format, anything else that you would like to do? Let's say
This was very interesting, Prasad Uncle. It was very helpful. And I really liked the topic. And I was engaged the whole time. So thank you.
Good. Anybody else?
Yeah, same here. Like, I love the scientific aspects that you've always like incorporated. It really makes it much more easier for me to like actually practice and follow through, knowing that there's like a lot of like truth and everything. So thank you. Really interesting.
And always think of this as an empowering tool. That's what our aim is. We need to empower ourselves. No one else will. We should do it. Right? Okay.
Prasada, 1 minute, Sanjeev.
Yeah.
Please put into the main group also, no? This recording and.
Oh yeah. I do. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeta.
All right. So I'll see you next week. Next week, yoga. Okay. And I may talk about the 6 different philosophies, and since I mentioned sin, I may touch upon that a little bit. Okay. But there's no concept of sin the way the Abrahamic religions talk about.
Really very sensible to all these youngsters, no? Really very good.
Yeah.
Really, thank you, Cheta. Thank you.
Very nicely covered all the topics and the most important. So it's an ocean, as you say, it's never ending, but you've touched upon it so well and so effectively. Thank you, Prasad.
All right. See you all next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.